But then a short notice custom came in, and it was just so charming, I had to shoot it. So I was dominant. I was wearing a latex catsuit, and I was talking to the camera as though the camera was a sub. And basically, it's 10 minutes of me persuading him to get into a garbage chute, which was a new kink for me. I didn't know about that. And I
You're not aware of the garbage kink?
Well, I don't know what his kink is really, because it was important that it was a latex garbage chute. So I'm guessing he's got a latex thing. But as often is the case with these things, I kind of thought, oh God, can I fill 10 minutes telling someone to get into a garbage chute? And then I discovered, of course I can. Of course I can. So I had a lovely morning, and then I went cycling. I cycled up the canal behind my house for an hour. I went to a pub for lunch. I cycled home. I watched Schindler's List, did some admin, and now I'm here. It's been a lovely day.
Ariel Anderssen, thank you for being here. I want to start off the show by saying, everybody, we are in the midst. We are witnesses to a muse, an artist,
Yes.
a wonderful person, Ariel Anderssen. Oh, I do want to say that we are adults. Everything we talk about in this episode, in this podcast, is consensual. This is role play. This is the kink community. This is a culture. All right. Yeah. We're not promoting violence. We're not promoting any predatory behavior. This is over 21. Really, everything. It's consensual adults having fun. These are fictional characters, and kink helps kink. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored. I'm so thankful. We're going to have a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend, and a wonderful life. Please welcome the magnificent Ariel Anderssen. Say hi.
Hello, Nicholas. Hello, everyone. It's very nice to be here. I'm very much looking forward to. Oh, hello. Someone's saying something nice. Hello, thank you, Inertia Force.
Inertia Force. Oh my God, she's one of my fave BDSM models. Yes. Oh, everyone's coming out. Know why? Because you're awesome.
Hello. Oh, this is very fun.
Stan Vladimir. Greetings, Miss Ariel.
Oh, man, I wasn't expecting to see people's pictures. This is great.
Huh? Yes. Slip Red. She inspired me to write stories again. So all right, this is going to be a great show. Let's start it off right now. What's inspiring you these days?
Well, this is a very good question. And I'm afraid it means that we're jumping straight into something rather heavy, because the thing that is inspiring me right now is the story of Khalif Browder, who I only just found out about. But he was a young black man. He was still in school, and he was incarcerated on Rikers Island for 3 years before his trial, and was then exonerated. And he could have taken a plea deal and been let out, but he was innocent, and he insisted on maintaining his innocence. And just the kind of moral courage of that, although it's a horrific story and it doesn't get any happier later on in the story, it is really inspiring. And I'd already been very inspired by the victims of Larry Nassar in the sentencing hearing, the US gymnastics doctor who had abused a lot of children and teenagers. And during the sentencing hearing, they were speaking out about their experiences, and this was all being televised. And as some were coming forward, it was making more past victims come forward as well. And just, I'm inspired by the courage of these people to tell the truth under circumstances which are very challenging. And it makes me think, okay, if they can tell the truth under those circumstances, I can tell the truth under much less arduous circumstances than them. So they are inspiring me to be truthful.
Wonderful. That's the power of writing too. You wrote a book. You have a book out. Please tell us all about it and why it's important. And we're going to get onto it, but just tell us about the book before we get into it.
My book is a memoir, and it's about growing up in a religious cult. My parents were Jehovah's Witnesses, so I grew up believing the world was about to end, which of course affects how you feel about everything, really. It meant that I didn't expect to have a career. I didn't expect to become an adult. I didn't expect to get married or have a sex life. So it's about the ways in which that kind of background can affect you later in life, but also about coming to terms with a non-standard sexual identity from within a quite fundamentalist religious background. So I ended up as a BDSM model, a professional BDSM model. BDSM is my job. But getting to a point where I was comfortable with that has been quite a difficult journey as a result of coming from such an authoritarian religious background where so much is judged. So it is a little bit of a long and complicated journey to have got me to here.
It truly resonates with me, and I think it should resonate with everybody in the kink community, because we're all dealing with shame.
Yeah.
And we're good people. That's the thing. We're good people too. We like sex. You know what? Sex makes the world go round. Like, sex creates, like, we like sex, and we're just creative, and we talk about it honestly. It's a wonderful thing that you're doing. Dressmaking, baking Swiss rolls that don't crack, and collecting antique swords. We're gonna do nothing but talk about that this whole episode. No, let's go back to the book. We're gonna talk about that because you love that. But let's talk about the book.
Sure.
Why did you need to write this book?
I needed to write it really because all through my adult life, I've had this desperate instinct to write to the person who I was, me at 12, me at 16, to write back to her and tell her it was going to be okay, that it's going to be all right. The fantasies she has are going to be okay. She's going to find a partner who's going to think her fantasies are acceptable. And through this desire to write back to my previous self, which obviously I can't do, I thought, well, I guess the next best thing is to write to the people who might still be where I was once, very ashamed, secretive about their sexual identities. And I thought if I could write my story and potentially help other people be a little more courageous about not staying in the closet with their sexual tastes, that felt like that could be quite a powerful thing. So I wrote it in the hope that that would be something I might be able to achieve.
And I really think you have. And as writers, as a fellow author, that's what we should do. Authors should help each other out. Kink authors, BDSM authors should help each other out. One way to do it, we're going to talk about the promotion and everything like that, but let's talk about the book. So what has been the response like? It's one thing to model, right? It's one thing to go on FetLife, to put a profile out, you know, even go on and be in a show, on a podcast or anything like that. But it's another thing to write something that's from yourself, because it represents you. It represents who you are. Yeah. And then everybody reads it. What was the response like?
The response has been incredibly generous. It's interesting that you are right. It was very exposing. And given that I work naked as a model, I wasn't really expecting it to feel so exposing to write down my feelings, because, you know, I was doing it in the safety of my house. But actually writing about my life has felt more exposing than getting naked on camera. So I guess that makes you feel quite vulnerable. And I was really grateful that my family's response has been really good. My sister sent me a video of my brother-in-law, her husband, just laughing, reading my book and laughing. And it was the most positive, lovely thing to see, because I guess it just made me feel really accepted, because the idea of him being able to just laugh at a story that, you know, isn't all funny, isn't all jolly, it made me feel, well, if there are some scenes in the book that are a bit much, at least there are scenes in the book that have made them laugh and have made them sort of see the humor in what I do for a living.
And that's, I think that's the power of writing.
Yeah.
You know, the power of writing, like, especially anybody in the kink community, anybody who's outside the kink community, at least I feel, tends to view us as like less than people. You know what I mean? In many ways.
Some of that, yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? We are people. You know, we have kinky friends. And like, my book is really all about that connection and the creativity that comes from it. So I can't say it again. I can't say it enough. Ariel, you are an inspiration. So how has the response been from the BDSM community? Now, you already have a following in the BDSM community.
Yes. So I felt a really great responsibility to the people who already follow me. I wanted to deliver a book that they would want to read. And fortunately, the response from those people has been really generous, like far more than I would have really been able to expect. I really am very grateful for that, because of course the kinky community are the people who kind of know about this stuff. So if I'd got stuff wrong, or if people felt that I'd misrepresented either my industry or my community, that would have been dreadful. And I've certainly felt concerned about that possibility. So yeah, the BDSM community has been very, very kind, and I've really appreciated that. And a lot of the reviews I've got on Amazon have been from members of the kinky play community. And to me, those people are the experts. That's for me a little bit like being reviewed in a Sunday broadsheet or something, because those are the people who really know, not about writing specifically, but about BDSM. And so, yeah, nice responses from those people has meant an awful lot to me.
So now, Sunshine says responsibility, kindness, and kink go hand in hand, and so many people outside the community don't know or understand that. Very
it is a community, isn't it? I mean, I know the BDSM community isn't perfect, but it generally, I think, is kind, and I really appreciate the kindness and the lack of judgment that, broadly speaking, I think our community does feel like it's full of.
Grelitz Lagriff says BDSM, baking deliciously stupendous meals. Don't know if I enjoy more your modeling job or your pastry activities. We're going to talk about pastries. I have a love affair with food. I love the art of cooking. I love of making something and then giving it to somebody else. It's like the ultimate form of tribute and praise. It's wonderful. So, how do you bake Swiss rolls that don't crack?
I can't. They crack. It's a nightmare. I don't know. I've given up. I've cooked many, and they've never been perfect. Sometimes they're disastrous, and sometimes they're kind of on the edge of acceptable, but they're still not good. And I'm very angry with them, honestly, because then I go into supermarkets and I see Swiss rolls just mocking me from the shelves. And it makes me very sad. That's all. So now I bake simpler things. Rolls.
How can we? Can you use Swiss rolls in BDSM?
I mean, I guess as a kind of part of a carrot/stick kind of scenario. I mean, I wouldn't mind being dominated by someone offering me Swiss roll if I was a very good girl, and something nasty if I wasn't. I could get behind that.
Let's go to the comments before we go more into the questions. I knew this was coming. Jackson's back. Madam, please, please, please. 3 times, like Morrissey. Please, please, please. I want to be your toilet slave.
I'm a son.
Yeah, you're a son. Yeah, we're going to talk all about that. We're going to definitely talk about all
terrible,
that.
Terrible.
And Jackson really wanted your question spelling my name wrong. But yeah. Ariel is a sub. Sunshine says, your honesty is beautifully refreshing, even about Swiss rolls.
Thank you, Sunshine. Thank you. I cannot do Swiss rolls.
Stan Vladimir says, one of my favorite dreams is when I have a girlfriend or /wife. I want to wake up early in the morning and make her breakfast in bed.
Oh, that is a lovely idea. That's beautiful. Yeah. I've not been made breakfast for a long time. That's a lovely thought.
Okay, you have built a reputation for honesty and frankness about your sexual identity, your career, and your personal life. Some people are always like that. They're like born like that, boom. But some people have this moment in time where they're like, I have to be honest with myself, with everybody else. I wrote a book called The Coolest Way to Kill Yourself. And it's about that. It's about becoming yourself. I killed off the old person I once was. Coolest way to kill yourself is love, basically. So did you have one of these moments to kind of be like that? Or did you feel like you were just always like that?
It wasn't a moment for me. It was a resolution. So every year I make myself a 1-word resolution to try to live by. And I think it was 2017, maybe 2018. My one word resolution for the year was honesty. And so I just thought I will try to keep that at the forefront of my mind all year. And it's not like I considered that I was a dishonest person before that, but I just thought every time there's a choice between maximum honesty and something that isn't quite as honest as that, I will aim for full honesty. And in that year, the kind of conversations I had with other people as a result, the things I learned about them because I was being honest about myself were really extraordinary. And so, I mean, I was already sharing a fair bit online at that point, but since I've tried to kind of up my game regarding honesty, specifically for me, I think talking about negative stuff, because when you're promoting your business through your social media, it's really tempting to just Instagram everything up. So you only talk about positive stuff. You only put pictures of yourself up that look really nice, and all of that. And so in the last few years, I've tried to balance that with a lot more about health problems, family problems, that kind of thing. I think just so that people don't look at me and think I've got a kind of charmed life, because I'm aware that's what I think about some of the people I follow, and I don't think it's the most helpful thing in the world.
It is extremely important to get behind the cause, get behind something you believe in. That's how we make change. And I am very happy that you took the time out when I asked you the question, what's inspiring you these days, to say truly what's on your mind. That is, I mean, that's something that we all can take a note from and that we should do. There are many things that are on my mind, that causes that I use in this platform. You know, like I said, we're good people. We're trying to make change. So, all right, playing to lose. Shame plays a huge role in the book. You know, there's that we're getting to the Jehovah's Witness and all that stuff like that. But in general, just as a fellow kinky person, you know, it's like people struggle with change, even though we're not doing anything wrong, so to speak. It's psychological. It's part of the culture and stuff like that. How can people overcome shame?
Yeah, it's a really big question, isn't it? Because I would not like anyone to assume that I have fully overcome it. I don't know if I ever really will. Perhaps it's inevitable with the background I've got, that shame is kind of baked into you through spending your formative years in a religious cult. So I think the best way of combating shame, the best way I've found, is honesty. Because if you keep
communication.
If you keep being honest about yourself, including the stuff you're ashamed of, at least in my experience, often what I get in response is people being very supportive and very positive and sharing the things that they feel ashamed about as well. So I think the best way of de-shaming is to disseminate everything you're thinking about, all the things that you feel ashamed about, spread them everywhere and let other people agree with you. Because certainly as a kinky person, having gone from thinking I was like the only person with these fantasies in the world and feeling terribly ashamed, it wasn't until I started doing BDSM modeling and I started meeting other people who were also kinky, and some of them hadn't been open about it. It's like we emboldened each other, and I think we probably de-shamed each other to quite a great extent as well. So that is my answer.
So when you're going through your when you're discovering yourself basically in the kink world, and you're like, wow, I like things that are a little different. For example, I used to make my own homemade straitjackets out of raincoats and belts and stuff like that. I just because I liked the feeling. It wasn't, you know, it was just weird and inventive and kind of creative and sexual, but still, you know, you're discovering yourself. What were the things that you'd like to do that kind of made you feel like, wow, I'm a kinky person?
Well, a lot of the things I did earlier on in my life didn't make me think, I'm a kinky person, because I didn't know that kinkiness was a thing. But certainly I was exploring the possibilities of putting my dressing gown on backwards So back to front, that felt a bit like a straitjacket to me. And I was experimenting with the idea of kind of creating homemade corsets by just tying my dressing gown cord around my waist really, really tight. Both these things seemed tremendous. And yeah, it wasn't until I was much older in a shop trying on a corset for the first time that I thought, yeah, that's what I was doing. That's like, this is what this is meant to feel like. And I was trying to create that experience for myself far before the point that I knew anything about being kinky and that this could be a sexual orientation. I was just doing the thing that seemed like a very sensible thing to be doing, that seemed to feel really good. And I guess a lot of our early experiences of kinkiness are like that, at least for our generation, because we, generally speaking, grew up without a whole load of knowledge about the BDSM scene. I guess that people growing up now have less ignorance, and so perhaps they do perhaps realize a bit younger that what they're doing is kinky, but I had no idea at all.
No, you said corsets. You said creating homemade corsets.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You really struck it over me in that one. What is it, in your opinion, about corsets that you personally like? What does it for you about corsets?
Well, you see, this is an interesting thing because these days they don't do anything for me at all because I get to wear them all the time in work. And in comparison to actual bondage, they're a very poor replacement. But when you don't have any bondage in your life, anything that's a bit like bondage is very exciting. So yeah, I don't have any erotic relationship with corsets now, although of course I understand why a lot of people do. But when I didn't have anyone to tie me up, yeah, being in a corset felt amazing. Now it just feels like my uniform, my work uniform.
Now, the psychological aspect of actually wanting to be tied up.
Yeah,
I get it. And anybody, this goes out to Stan, the medical fetish, people who want to be restrained, stuff like that. Why do you enjoy it?
Wow. Well, that is a massive question, isn't it? Because the fact is,
Yeah.
I don't know. My best guess is that this is a genetic predisposition, at least for some of us, because from my earliest memories, this seemed like a really good idea. The idea of being tied up by someone else or taken charge of or dominated by someone else. It just felt an inherently exciting, delicious idea. And so I can't say that I think it's about anything particular. It's just like, why do I need to eat every 4 hours? Why do I need 8 hours sleep a night? Like, because that's what I am. That's what I am. That's how I'm wired. And earlier on in my life and career, I worried a lot about why. What's this about? What does it mean? Is it because of my relationship with my mother when I was a child? Is it because of the religion I grew up in? And as time has gone on and I've become more comfortable with myself, the less I feel like I need to understand why, because I feel like maybe it's just me. Maybe this is how I'm meant to be. And I like that feeling.
Yeah. Right on. We have some comments. Inertia Force says she's a tall girl too, if I remember correctly, like 6 foot tall or something. Yep. Am I right, Ariel?
6'2".
Google says 6'1". Inertia Force.
Google's wrong.
Inertia Force is Googling your height. Jeremy Browning says, I had the privilege of meeting her a few months ago, and she had to bend down low to hug me. I'm 5'9".
I am so tall. And
it's wonderful.
Because my height would be such a benefit if I was a dominant, I imagine. I feel like probably I look to some people like a kind of archetype of a dominant woman. And yet, actually, I'm submissive. And my height is not a benefit for that.
Tom Sherblick says, I can relate. When I stopped asking why, I enjoyed my fetish way more.
Yeah.
Very good point, Tom. Very good point. Sometimes, look, you don't have to understand why. What you have to understand is just be a good person. Really, use your fetish for good.
Yeah.
It's possible. It's great. Look what Ariel's doing.
And I think a
writing
much
books.
better question than why is like, how am I going to do it? How am I going
Yeah.
to like, take charge of this and get the maximum joy from it?
Okay, so I'm gonna get right into it. Jehovah's Witness. So you were born a Jehovah's Witness. This is the world that was given to you. How emotionally, how do you, or just really analytically analyzing the world, how do you come from like, there must be a different life, there must be more? What were some of the things that like really stuck out to you? Like, this interesting, there's more to this.
There's like, when I look back at my life as a Jehovah's Witness, it just felt like I had no choices at all. Like, so many things were shut down to us. So many of the things that my peer group would have wanted to be, like, for example, I knew I couldn't be a pop star because like we weren't allowed to listen to pop music. I knew I wouldn't be allowed to be a TV presenter because we didn't have a TV. I suspected the world was going to end before I was going to get to have any job at all. But so many of the things that young children would have aspired to be, I knew that wasn't an option for me. The Jehovah's Witnesses, they're a very patriarchal religion, so women really don't get to do very much at all. So being born into the Jehovah's Witnesses as a girl who's going to be a woman, it feels like there really aren't very many opportunities at all. So honestly, the fact that I also wasn't going to be able to get to explore my sexuality very freely, it was just one of a whole number of things that were shut down to me. So as a result, my life as a non-Jehovah's Witness, it feels so full of opportunities and freedom. And I am grateful for that, because I see that a lot of us, certainly in the West, we take that for granted because by and large we're affluent, we have a lot of choices. And it's only because I had a childhood where I didn't have those things that I kind of appreciate them every day, and I'm not sure I'll ever stop.
Very, very good point. A lot of people who come from religious backgrounds, there are some people go the dom route. You know, for a perfect example, Chastity Queen, a friend of the show, Chastity Queen, she grew up in a cult. She talks all about it all the time. And now she thinks that every man should be locked in chastity and she should have the key around it.
I can see that would be a very reasonable response to growing up, especially in a patriarchal.
How come? Why do you think your response wasn't to go, full aggro in the dom sense? Aggressively dom.
I can tell you exactly why. The reason is because I think my submissiveness is so much at the heart of me that nothing could take that away from me. Nothing. No amount of patriarchy or sexual violence or sexism in the workplace will ever be able to stop me from being what I am. And what I am is a submissive. And there's no way that any amount of religious abuse or the limitations put on us by religion, no amount of that could take away my sexuality, because it's innate. And I'm really grateful for that.
Let's talk about submission for a while. Shout out to my friend Luna Dark, a very good friend who is a born submissive. Like she's a smart submissive. In my book, right? In my book, she has a questionnaire for her doms. She makes them write an essay. She's like, oh, you want to dom me? Here's an application. Good
for her.
So I want to talk about how to be a smart submissive, but let's just talk about why you love the feeling of being submissive. I mean, I can tell you why I like it, but why do you like it?
I like the feeling of voluntarily handing over what feels like everything that I am, all the best bits of me, handing them to someone else, handing myself to someone else, and trusting them to do something good with that. That's what I like. It's I guess what I'm describing is the power exchange, isn't it? I'm taking myself, I'm an independent woman, and I'm handing over all that power temporarily to someone else, and I'm going to see what happens. And to me, that that little journey is so exciting that I want to do it over and over again for the rest of my life, because it's just amazing. So why do you like it?
Well, I also think I like it because I feel like I'm contributing and doing something good.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously.
Yep.
I'm in love. I love this woman. And she locked me in chastity and stuff like that. And we have fun. We have games. This is all voluntary. It's all consensual, but literally submitting to her, I feel like I'm a better person. I feel like I can accomplish something. I feel like I'm a part of something that I believe in and that I'm good at. I want my queen to succeed. I want her to be successful and happy. You know what I mean? And I want to be a part of that. So, and then when it comes to the kink community, that runs deep for me. I feel like I'm contributing to a healthy, creative, whimsical lifestyle of romance and love. That's what does it for me. And on that note, if anyone out there is looking to be owned, get 15% discount with offer code YKF at lockedinlust.com. 15% off. Find the key holder. Your life will change. Definitely. Okay, submission, the act of submission.
Mm-hmm.
How, as someone who's in submissive, and you are talented, you're intelligent, but you're also very beautiful. So that makes dominance, that can turn dominant like into predators. It's their fault, it's not yours, but it attracts people. Basically, your beauty attracts people. How can a beautiful, intelligent person who wants to be submissive explore the kink community in a safe way?
Wow, that's a really good question, because I have to say that when I talk to people, especially people younger than me, whose first step into this kinky world was to go to like a BDSM club, that sounds terrifying to me. Terrifying, because if you're anything like an attractive woman walking in on your own, it just feels like you might not be bombarded by bad people. You might be bombarded by a whole load of great people who'd be great dominants, but that sounds quite overwhelming. So honestly, I think I had an incredibly easy ride into this community because I did it through the industry. So the way that works is I went and met individual dominants one at a time because I was working with them. And so there was no bombarding. There was no being overwhelmed by a whole group of people like vying for me. I just got to work with these people one to one. And eventually I found one who I wanted to marry. So I did. So that, honestly, I always just want to tell everyone, just become a BDSM model. It will make it so much simpler for you. But obviously, a lot of people don't want to do their BDSM on camera. It's just that if you do happen to be comfortable with that, I have to say it's pretty good, because you can look at people's work, you can see their skill level, you can see how trustworthy they are just based on the work that they produce and the interactions they have with the people they work with on social media.
Yes.
If you want to research someone before you play with them, bondage producers or BDSM producers are very easy to research. And as a result, I've not had a whole load of bad experiences. I've had some, obviously, but I've not had a whole load of bad experiences because I'm working with people who've got a very, very public body of work that I can see. Whereas some guy in a club telling you he's the most experienced dom in the world and he can make you come just by looking at you, I mean, there's no way to disprove that. So yeah.
All right, that brings me up to another thing. I want to talk about modeling and I want to talk about the power of photography, but the doms coming up to you or the photographers, they're two different people. Sometimes they're not mutually exclusive, but sometimes you get a dom photographer, So please, what are some red flags as a model dealing with a photographer that and you can go nonsensical if you want, but what are some red flags? We're looking out for our fellow young models here.
Yes.
So
yes.
please, what are some
Fortunately, generally, if you are contacted by a BDSM photographer, they will do it by email. Thank God, because that gives you a little bit of time to work out if this is someone you actually feel safe meeting. And so the red flags that I always see before you even have to meet these people, which is so good, is that they will tend to show you who they are through the sort of questions that they ask you. So a really reasonable, sensible BDSM photographer will be asking you things like, what wardrobe do you have? Would you be able to get to Birmingham for a shoot sometime in September? Very normal, not sexy questions. A dodgy, awful photographer will be asking you, do you have any tie-sided bikini panties? Can you send me photographs of all your panties? What level will you work up to? Like, can we shoot the hardest thing you've ever done? I've seen this one picture of you online that's really extreme. Can we do that? So thank God they tend to show you exactly who they are far before you have to get into a room with them, and that is such a blessing.
Good. That's fine. The list of questions. This is really humorous to me. So, can we shoot the hardest thing you've ever done? Just the wording of that. Let me wrap my head around that. Can we shoot the hardest thing? And then you got the other one. What was the other one? Can you show me pictures of all of your panties, not just the one your panties now, all of them.
Yeah. And it just tells you that those individuals, they're quite likely to be actually what they're doing is they're trying to have a conversation that they can masturbate to. So decent photographers are having the kind of conversation with you that they couldn't possibly be masturbating to, logistics, very dull stuff. So that's something to look out for sure for new models.
One thing though, in the kink community, there's a kink for everything. So if you're talking about like accounting for a shoot of a porn, some people maybe be excited about that over the actual content. So you never know with the kink community. We got some questions. Sunshine asks, how old were you when you decided not to be Jehovah's Witness?
Well, I didn't actually get to decide. I was 13 and my parents decided to leave. And honestly, sometimes I wonder how old I would have had to be before I would have left for myself, because the problem with leaving a cult is the penalties are massive, because all the people who were in the cult, if you leave, they won't speak to you anymore, at least in the Jehovah's Witnesses. I guess it's probably not the same in every cult. But so the idea of losing contact with your friends and family is enough to keep a lot of people in for a really long time. And I mean, leaving was really scary, even though my parents had decided we were going to. I'd grown up with the idea that if you leave the Jehovah's Witnesses, you will die in Armageddon, which is going to be in like 5 years' time. So even with my family leaving at the same time as me, it was still really frightening. And the idea of doing that on my own, honestly, I have so much respect for people who manage to do that. I do now, because of the book I wrote. I've ended up speaking to a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, some of whom did leave all on their own and lost their whole family as a result. And it's unbelievable, really, that anyone is courageous enough to do that, because you lose out on so much.
I was going to say, there's a whole world out there. Jeremy Browning says, Rule 34, if it exists, there's porn about it, even Swiss rolls.
Even rubbish shoots, as I found out this morning.
Rubbish shoots and Swiss rolls. Definitely. Okay, so let's get, we got books. All right, let's get into the books. The book hustle. All right, you publish a book. I am sure that it's, first of all, it's an independent book. So, there are hurdles. There are hurdles about it. You're an independent author from the kink community. Where do you begin? How do you get it?
I discovered I needed a publisher. Like, I know that self-publishing is an option, but I realized that I was unwilling to do that because it was so important to me that I got social acceptance for my story. And social acceptance meant, for me, being taken on by a normal mainstream publisher. So it was really hard. So if you want a publisher, the first thing you need to find is a literary agent. So I started applying to literary agents and discovered that all the female literary agents in London wanted to turn me down. And I think that was because I'm a
Why do
sex
you
worker.
say that is? Oh, okay.
I think because my story is a sex worker's story, and also I think specifically because I'm a submissive. I think what a couple of them said is, post the Me Too movement, publishing the story of someone who gets paid to be submissive to men is quite a politically sensitive topic.
If anything, that makes it more intriguing than ever, than all these other things. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously.
Because my job is not being sexually assaulted, which is what Me Too is about. It's nothing to do with that. So it was really frustrating.
Well, you know what I want to say to those literary agents who turned you down? You know what? I'm not buying the books of the people they're representing.
Yeah.
I'm really not. There's different audiences for something. So, if you follow the money, there's money in the BDSM community. You just have to have the right friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I was an agent in the end, and I did find a publisher in the end. It was just that writing the first draft of the book took me 6 weeks, but finding a literary agent and a publisher took me 4 years. So that part of the process was far harder than the actual writing. But then I got to go through the whole traditional publishing process, which has taught me a lot about how that business works, which is going to stand me in good stead for next time I want to get a book published, because now I'm not starting from a position of not knowing anything. Now, at least I know how it works, or a little bit about how it works. So I'm glad I did it that way. And it was really nice to see my book sitting in bookshops, not on the top shelf, like not hidden away in the kind of erotica section, just in memoir.
Because you're not just writing erotica. You're not. You're writing a life story. You're writing, your life basically. So, but your life just consists of a lot of sex and a lot of kink. So it's a beautiful thing. What about the process? I have a specific process. I don't know if it's OCD, but for example, when I wrote Your Kinky Friends, I write about writing the book in the book, right?
Oh,
especially
yes, good.
Yeah, you're the coolest way to kill yourself. The picture, the drawing made by Melissa Blair, is me at my computer. I was devastated by the loss of the love of my life, and I had to move in with my parents during Hurricane Sandy because I needed shelter. We didn't have electricity, so I had a dog from an old marriage, and I lost the love of my life. So I decided to write a book about her in tribute to her, and that's what it is. So, okay. So there's a whole creative process. For Your Kinky Friends, I would listen to songs to get me amped up, right? I would block out certain. I'm like, I'm writing tonight. I'm not going to talk to any, unless if something happened, that's fine. I'll get myself in the mood and songs process. I'll have, even sometimes I think I'll wear something, like a sweater or something, a certain shirt or something like that. What's your process?
I'm unwilling to take time off my normal job, which is modeling, in order to write. So my writing has to happen in my time off, really. So when I wrote my first book, I wrote a lot of it late at night, after I'd finished sometimes quite long days shooting. I'd say goodnight to my husband. I'd pretend to fall asleep. He'd fall asleep. And then I'd get up and write for a while. This time round, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get all my modeling work done by maybe 3 p.m. Then I'll cycle to a cafe or a garden center or a pub, and I'll take my laptop and I'll write for a couple of hours a day, and then cycle home. So I find I do my best writing, or at least the writing that feels the most comfortable, I do it in coffee shops and cafes. I don't know why. It's a weird thing because it's not the most peaceful environment, but I think it's the fact that I've gone there specifically to do that job. So I don't get distracted in the way that I do at home by thinking, I should do some laundry or something. So I also write on planes. If I have long flights, I really like writing there because again, there's nothing else I really could be usefully doing. I love it. I love it.
What about structure? For me, I have the story in my head. I know it. And now it's filled, overwhelmingly filled with details and just things and music and little, I have to get the right timing and everything, where to put what word and everything like that. So then I do an outline. When it comes to outlining your work and outlining the book, What was that process like? Did you have an outline, or did you get it out? I get it out first, kind of like in like a orgasm onto the page, and then I fix it up. Edit after. What's your process?
My process when I was writing my memoir was I made myself a synopsis, chapter by chapter. Like this is what I want the chapters to be. And then I decided, instead of writing chronologically, I thought I would write the chapters in order of how much I wanted to write them. So I wrote the chapters I wanted to write, because then every so often it would occur to me why I didn't want to write a particular chapter. And then I'd think, well, I wonder if there's a way of skipping that part of the story, because if I don't want to write it, probably no one's going to want to read it. And so I found that the shape of my memoir changed as I went along, because I kept on, I think, just having better ideas about how to express what my life had involved without telling all the kind of dull bits in between the things that I actually thought were relevant. So it was like writing a series of essays, really, getting the first draft out, and then came the editing when I started working through the whole thing and adding the things I realized I needed to put in, just to make sure that the story actually did flow, as opposed to looking like a series of essays.
All right, we have some questions. Inertia Force asks, what is your religious belief now? Agnostic? Atheist?
I'm fully atheist. It's really interesting that the rest of my family all remained religious. And to me, having kind of experienced all the limitations of religion, I couldn't get far away enough from it. I wanted a complete break from that. I didn't want the input of any, to my mind, imaginary being kind of telling me how to live. I wanted to make all the rules for myself forever.
I totally understand that and respect that, because like if you look just throughout history, organized religion, as helpful as it is for many people, it's about control. It's about controlling other people.
Yeah. That's how I feel, yeah.
It really is. We have some more questions. Jeremy Browning says, "Thank goodness Kate was there."
Yes.
Stan Vladimir says, "What is your most intense session as a sub? And have you tried being a dom or a switch?"
I have not tried being a dom or a switch. I mean, I do it in point of view style movies. So I do verbal domination to a camera. But no, I haven't tried. I just know that the idea is absolutely horrific to me. I'd rather not do any BDSM ever again than have to dominate anyone in real life. It just horrifies me. But the most intense stuff I've done as a sub, at least on camera, is with Eric Kane, who runs a site called Futile Struggles, which is pretty hard BDSM, like very, very tough rope bondage with a whole load of extra BDSM elements. Lots of impact play and nipple and pussy clamps and stuff. And there's not really anyone shooting anything like that in the UK. So he's in the US, so I don't get to work with him very much, but he is the person who has got the most intense work of me on camera. And I really like it. But that I didn't start working with him till relatively late in my career. So it's like I discovered a net extra gear when I started working with him, because I really hadn't kind of pushed the limits of what I was capable of doing. And now it's made me think, gosh, what else might I be capable of doing? And I kind of want to find out.
On a side note, for indie authors out there, whether kinky or not, I've a friend of the show. People may not know Al Call from CBS Radio. He has a show called People of Distinction. He's a friend of the indie author. So he's a friend of mine, a personal friend of mine. He's the coolest guy in broadcasting. Please reach out to him. Get some publicity. He'll give you friend prices. He's great. Okay. Soba Paul, Mr. Paul says, how be a good sub? So basically, in your opinion, what makes a good submissive?
Ask your dom, I guess. Like, ask your dom what they want.
Yeah.
I guess there's no sort of objective gold standard. there's nothing objectively that any particular dominant would want from their submissive. So it feels very much like being the submissive that your dominant needs at that particular point in your life, probably, I would say.
Mr. Paul continues, I am a chastity slave, and my dom are looking for punishment ideas. Can you suggest some?
Well, I mean, again, it depends what you're into, doesn't it? Because I guess there are some things I could suggest that if neither of you enjoy them, then there's no point me saying impact play if your dom doesn't enjoy doing impact play, because I'm assuming any punishment you'd be wanting to do would be something you'd want it to be something your dom would like. So I guess it probably needs to be led by the two of you. You need to communicate with each other, really, because BDSM is such a broad church, and there's no point doing activities that neither of you get anything out of.
Tom asks, has recording the audiobook maybe given you a different perspective on how to potentially write going forward in terms of how you might want to write and how might people want to read your story?
Yes. So I finished yesterday recording the audio version of Playing to Lose, which is my memoir, my first book. And it's been such an interesting process recording the audio version. And the first thing is, in book 2 that I'm in the middle of writing, now that I've recorded the audiobook, I'm not giving anyone accents. So if anyone in my story has an accent, I'm just not writing any speech for them, because I don't want to have to try to do like 12 different accents again when I'm doing the audiobook version, because it turns out I'm not good at that, and it was really stressful. But the other thing I learned in the process of doing my audiobook was that the power of writing a memoir and telling people what your life was like, putting it down on paper, that feels really powerful. And then the additional layer of power of then getting to read it aloud.
Yes.
Tell people how you feel about those words. Like, it just felt, for a submissive, I really enjoy power.
Yes.
Learning.
Oh, wow. What a wonderful point that you brought up, because my editor and I, Miss Melissa, who was, rest in peace, so we read the book out loud to edit. Oh. So that means we would read it, like we read the book over and over again and made the edits while we were reading it. So we performed a book. So we wanted it. So when you read the book, it sounds like you could hear the voice in your head. You know what I mean?
Great idea. That's a great.
That's what let's do it. Let's work on a book again. All right.
Be doing is everything aloud. Sorry. Yes, carry on. Yes.
The Stans, thank you very much. Your kindness means a lot to me, and I appreciate it. I do. Stan Vladimir asks, if you could have any superpower, what would it be? And how would you please your Dom partner? And what type of superpower would you like your Dom partner to have and use on you? Wow, he took it up another notch, Stan. Well done.
The answer to this, I know the answer, because what I've always wanted to have is a power that I try to have, but I don't have it because it's impossible, is to genuinely understand what it's like being in someone else's head. And I really try, and it's especially important when I'm doing BDSM, because I really want to understand what's in my dominant's head and what I can give them that will give them the most pleasure. So if there was a superpower that allowed you to actually enter someone else's mind and really understand from the inside what's important to them, that feels like an amazing gift for a sub to have. And also, although it would be quite frightening, I would like my dominant to have that knowledge of me as well, because of course we can do our best at reading body language and communicating.
Yeah.
Someone who really knows, because, I'm quite dramatic, and sometimes I exaggerate how much things hurt because I'm scared of it getting worse in a BDSM scenario.
Yeah, and there's the pageantry of it. There's the performance aspect of it, right?
The idea of a dominant who knows that you're exaggerating, I mean, that's very frightening, but also very exciting. So yeah, that would be my answer.
Wonderful. We got some more questions. Did you rewrite any sections for the audiobook, or is it pretty verbatim?
I wrote a new chapter because I felt as though if anyone who's already read the book buys the audiobook, I would like them to have something extra to enjoy. So there is it's kind of like an epilogue after the epilogue, which I recorded a couple of weeks ago. And it's really to update readers as to what's happened since my book was first published, and just to talk a little bit about the reaction of readers and also how I feel as a result of my book having been out in the world for 6 months. So it was really lovely to write that, and it was really nice to be able to record it, just to make sure that the audio version is an updated version of the book itself.
I think it's as an author, there's tremendous pressure because you know that this is going to be the document. This is a document that's going to leave. I mean, it's going to stay after you're gone.
Yeah.
So you want to make it as perfect as possible, but yet at the same time, you want to capture the essence of it, right? Of what you're trying to write. So how do you find that balance?
Well, that is really difficult. It is difficult, isn't it, as a writer? Because during the process of getting my book published, so I'd written it and it was in the editing process and then the marketing process, things changed in my life. So some of the people who are in my book, I'm no longer speaking to, for example. One of the people I wrote one chapter about, it was a chapter about a really good BDSM scene. He did something that really disappointed me very much just before publication. And obviously you can't keep changing it because that's what life is. That's how life moves. And so I guess you have to at some point just accept that, okay, well, this is a snapshot of how things were. And I guess there's always another book to be written, because until you're not alive anymore, things keep changing.
Yes.
And that's not a bad thing, really, is it?
No, not at all. So, okay. Stan and I, we are very, we love film. So he asks, if you would write and direct a movie, what would the subject matter be?
Oh, I don't feel like I would be qualified to write a movie at all. There's a TV company who are interested in making my book into a screenplay. And I really like the idea, but I know I've got no idea how to do that. I'd be fascinated to watch how someone else did it. But even writing or directing a movie about my own book seems like it would be terrifying. So yeah,
there is a show called Californication. David Duchovny is in it. Hit or miss show, but one of the things of the show is he writes a book called God Hates Us All, and then Hollywood came, right? Hollywood came and they changed it to a crazy little thing called Love and totally destroyed the soul of the book that he wrote. You know what I mean? So do you fear, like, you wrote a book, it's your life, it's your memoir, it represents you, you're the document that you wanted to represent you even after you're gone. How do you feel about someone maybe taking that and changing it, morphing it into something else, to misrepresenting you, or maybe representing you in a better way?
Yeah, I feel like it would be fine, because I think that art always kind of climbs onto the shoulders of what's gone before. So I know that there's a lot of TV series and movies that are based on books but don't bear very much relation to that book. I guess maybe it's a little bit more difficult because, of course, if someone took your memoir and turned it into something very different, it might mean that people have a false impression of you, the individual, as a result. But honestly, no, I think I'd just be very interested to see what someone would make using my book as a jumping off point. I'd quite like to watch something set in the universe of my book, but that isn't exactly like my book. I mean, that would mean that I could watch it and be surprised, so I'd be fine with that.
Sunshine says, Nicholas, Ariel is amazing. Well done. We need more subs on the show. Ariel will be hard to top. Get it? Well done. Tom says, you've commented elsewhere that you think your writing is better now, and that when you wrote Playing to Lose, as time passes, are you growing more or less fond of your writing at that time? It's a good question.
Good question. Tom, I know Tom in real life, and he is a writer, and I know that he sometimes doesn't like his own writing very much afterwards. And I certainly, reading my audiobook aloud so recently, it did make me aware that some of the chapters I wrote earlier, I felt the kind of immaturity in the voice that I was writing in. But that said, that's part of who I was at the time I was writing it. And I like it that the maturity growing in the later chapters. So no, I don't think it makes me not like the writing. It makes me grateful for the writing, because it was only the process of writing those early chapters that have made me
that's the spirit. Dude, that's you are a muse. It's wonderful.
It just feels like if you're trying to create stuff, doing it from a position of kind of self-hatred and self-criticism is such a terrible place to. It's such the enemy of creativity.
I also look at it this way: the fact that you're creating at all, you're creating something, right? You're creating something. So, of course, it's flawed. We're human beings. So, sometimes my writing has typos, spelling errors. There's so much information. Stuff's gonna get through. MF Doom. I write about MF Doom. I did not capitalize Doom in the book. That's what you're supposed to do. He has a song called All Caps when you spell the man's name. I blame my editor, not me. But and I did mention it.
We should just be. I think we should just be generous to ourselves as we.
Yes.
In any creative field, the time for judgment is not while you're doing it. You can judge later, but you need to be kind to yourself while you're creating stuff, because it's hard.
I think that it's hard to create something from nothing. You know what I mean? So the fact that you created, yes, okay, it's immature, or it's too wordy, or it's not wordy enough, or I could have used better adjectives or something like that. The fact that you wrote it down at all shows that you're alive. It's beautiful. All right. Thoughts on medical play. Stan Vladimir asks, what are your thoughts on medical play? As a submissive, I'm sure you've been in.
I am quite a pathetic person, I think, because I'm very malleable. So if I'm playing with someone who I fancy, who's into something, quite often I'll discover that I'm into it too, because the fact that they know how to do it is hot in itself. So their expertise is sexy. And the fact that that's what they want me to be. They want me to be a part in this scene. That's sexy too. So as a result, I don't really know what I think on medical play, because I've not played with anyone who was really doing medical play. To be honest, I'm not actually sure what that would even look like. I've done lots of stuff on camera where I've been playing doctors and nurses, often as a kind of dominant role, like dominating the camera. But I'm not sure what actually would happen to me if I was subbing in medical play. Please let me know and I'll tell you what I would think of it, because I don't know. I don't know.
Jeremy Browning says, it would be interesting to reread the book, but this time in an order that it was written.
Yeah.
Please talk about this.
It would be confusing, but I wonder if, now that I've told you that I wrote it out of chronological order, you might be able to spot the kind of immaturity of the early chapters and the relative maturity of the later ones.
Well, I bounce around in time, so in the coolest way, right? It's kind of hard to describe. So I write. She's already dead. Lynn already died, and I write about starting to write the book, and then I tell the story, basically. So I'm starting at the end, right? And writing the whole thing, but then there's flashbacks, and it goes back and it goes through time. That one of the final chapters, the memory that tells the story is while she's younger. And it kind of like, think of The Godfather, the original Godfather movie, and how at the end all the family's together. It's kind of like a flashback, and it brings a scene. So playing with time is extremely important to tell the story. Like Quentin Tarantino changes,
yes. Yeah, it does a great job of it. Yeah.
All right, we got Tom says, your book is due to be published in the US and Canada late 2024, early 2025. With your experience on how publishing in the UK went, is there anything you wish to try to do differently this time?
Yes, there is. There is. Last time, through a weird kind of accident, I had 2 different PR companies working on my book at the same time. And that was really confusing for me. And I think I lost some opportunities through not knowing who each opportunity should go through. So this time I'm really, really keen to work with the same PR people for the whole publicity campaign, however much of that I do. That's what I would like, because now I have learned that the whole PR publicity stuff is such a puzzle. You definitely need someone to help you do it. And having one person rather than 2 potentially kind of competing teams of people would definitely be better. That was really stressful, and I don't want to ever do that again. It felt horrible, and I kept feeling like I was sort of cheating on the other team, like super complex. Wow.
Okay. When it comes to writing, especially writing anything about sex, you're going to have to write some unique phrases and terms for organs and things like that. So let's go down some, right? One I saw was turgid shaft.
Ooh, I think that's very
or the word crevice.
crevice.
I don't know. It just doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't like get me going. You know.
Yeah. So in my first book, in Plain Blues, I don't actually write about actual intercourse, sexual intercourse. But in my second book, I'm having a stab at writing much more sexually explicitly. And I'm finding that I'm using the same 2 words over and over again. I'm just saying cock, pussy, cock, pussy, because I'm so worried about using any other words that people will find funny or ridiculous or disgusting. And so sometimes if I'm trying to be very classy, I'll say something like, he slides into me. And then I think, no, that sounds absurd. That sounds like the whole of him has slid into the whole of me, like I'm an alien. So it's very difficult. I may not be the ideal person to write actual sexual intercourse scenes because I am finding it exquisitely embarrassing. I think it's even worse because now I'm envisaging having to record it as an audiobook in front of an engineer. And that layer on top of my already embarrassment about writing about actual penis and vagina sex is considerable. So as a result, I'm not keen to be judgmental of people who do make a go at using some words other than just pussy and cock over and over again. Do you find this hard?
Oh yeah, I find it I view it as an artistic obstruction. You know, it's like saying, okay, you could write a smut scene, but you can't use any curse words or you can't use any profanity and you can't use an actual sexual medical term. So you have to use your imagination. You know, I use it, I view it as a fun, whimsical thing. You know what I mean? So I try to have fun with it. You know what I mean? So let me ask you this. How do you think BDSM in general, right, or the culture is represented or misrepresented in literature, in modern literature and classical literature in general?
I think that there are probably 2 things I'd really specifically love to change if I had the power to change how BDSM is represented in media, mainstream media. The first thing is I would love it if dominants weren't represented as kind of bad people. Because it seems like, especially historically, often a kind of shortcut for showing that a bad guy in a film is really bad, you know, maybe psychopathic, is they'll show some BDSM equipment. And that's meant to be the kind of shortcut for, oh my God, that's a wrong one. And I hate that, obviously, because I love dominance. Like, if there weren't male doms in the world, I wouldn't want to be in this world. I mean, I love them so much. And the idea of them being kind of presented as predatory or dangerous or dysfunctional even is really upsetting to me, because I thought the Secretary movie 20 years ago now, I think, I thought it was a beautiful portrayal of a female submissive, like really good. But the portrayal of the dominant man was really messed up. And I was sad for that. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that story, but it's sad that there's not a whole load of more positive.
I agree, because like what we strive for, I mean, as a dom or a sub, It doesn't matter. We're good. Like I said, we're good people. We want to protect each other, as it's just a dynamic, right? There's the mythology, but it's really, honestly, when it comes down to it, the simplicity of it, it's a dynamic, dominant and sub. And what we do is we're protecting each other. The sub is protecting the dom, and the dom is protecting the sub. It's a wild, wild world out there. We need to protect each other. That's beautiful. Okay. What how do you think you're writing, or just writing writing about BDSM in general, how do you think it's helped people?
Well, from what people have written to me, people who read my book, it seems like what my first book has done, at least, is to give people an opportunity to contextualize their own shame. So what I've really got a lot of is letters and emails from people who went through something not dissimilar to me, discovering they were kinky and feeling really ashamed or guilty, or as though they should fix that part of themselves. So I hope that I've helped people to see that there's a way forward from that. Now I'm very open about what I do, very out. But I came from a place where I couldn't, me at 16 couldn't imagine of ever having this conversation with anyone, let alone, it being broadcast.
Yeah.
So I hope that will help some people see, okay, well, I'm in the closet now, but maybe in 10 years, that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. So I think that's the main thing, that at least I know that I've helped a few people that way. And I'd really like to think that it will keep helping people with that.
And that's what communication, right? Telling stories, telling just our real stories about, and our real opinions of them. That creates communication. And in the kink community, we need that to help each other. We have Tom saying, I feel like you might be best off using the words that you find hot and would use if nobody else was going to read it. And that, I think, would be what feels most authentic to both of you and the reader. Another great comment, Tom. Right on.
Because that means I can just keep saying cock and pussy over and over again, because I like those words. So I will. Thank you.
Yeah. Cock and pussy. Yeah, that's a good quote. I like those words. I like those words. Cock and pussy. Cock and pussy. I'm going to put that in one of the quotes. Oh, we got more quotes. So Sunshine, representation in film, etc., of kink has made people think that kink is evil. It's the opposite. Without sounding religious, kink is heavenly.
I agree. And the other thing I was going to say that I really hate in mainstream media portrayals of kink, and I think 50 Shades of Grey was especially guilty of this, is that, for anyone who's not read it, spoiler alert, the Dom in it, Christian Grey, basically the reason he's kinky, as presented in the book, is because he was abused by his mother. And now he wants to find girls who look a bit like his mother and do BDSM with them. And that is such an alarming idea, because to me, and I hope to a lot of people, doing BDSM with someone is an expression of high regard for them, like lust, appreciation, respect. I don't do BDSM with people I don't respect, and I would not sub to someone who I didn't think actually liked me. The idea of someone wanting me as a sub because I look like their mum who they hate.
Yeah.
Wow. Very concerning. So yeah, that. I really wish that BDSM wasn't represented as though it was something to do with anger, because it's not. It's about lust, maybe even love.
Yes, thank you for those words. 50 Shades of Abuse. All right. Writing on two. What are the worst names for? All right, we did the superpower. And how do you deal with the kinky people are evil when it comes to Jehovah's Witness? Religion, there's shame and everything like that, but then it comes from the narrative that you're evil. That this thing that, like, sexual expression, kinky people, anything that's queer is like people, like, it's this message is put in our heads, and it's not true. We're good people. Like I said, how do you deal with that?
I think like the best way I've found to deal with it myself is to be really loud and really expressive as a person on social media and in all areas that I can be, because I think those of us who are out about being kinky, if we can just socialize, communicate with a whole load of people and be decent, be respectful and trustworthy, and those people will know that we're kinky as well. Like my hope is that we will normalize ourselves. And so perhaps next time my literary agent meets someone who's kinky, maybe he will be less prejudiced than he might have been, because he'll think of me, who he knows, and think about the fact that I've treated him with respect. And maybe it will make him less suspicious of kinky people. And I feel like if all of us, those of us who are open about our kink, if we just keep on communicating with the people we meet in the world in a positive way, then hopefully we can combat that attitude towards kinky people. That's my hope, and that's what I try to do.
Definitely. Sunshine says respect is paramount in kink.
Yeah.
And then we got some stuff about movies. Stan Vladimir says, I wish there was a movie that did a better representation of BDSM and kink. Jeremy, right from the gate, you beat me to it. Preaching to the Perverted isn't too bad. Preaching to the Perverted is a great movie. Shout out to Miss Kim Rubb from the UK. She's a technical consultant for that movie. She's been on the show many times. Preaching to the Perverted is an absolutely wonderful movie. It's on Tubi. I talked to the producers of it too. I want them on the show as well. Another great movie I highly recommend is Personal Services. It's also on Tubi.
No.
Oh, you haven't seen Personal Services? Personal Services is a true story about a British woman who basically starts a kinky brothel in her apartment.
Okay.
Terry Jones from Monty Python directed it.
Oh.
And it's kind of, when you think of Preaching to the Perverted, it also takes place in England, but it's very glamorous and you can tell a lot of money. Personal Services, it's about like the working class kink. Let's put it that way, which adds a whole cool charm to it. And as always, I like to get just hashtag kink helps kink. Let's get that going. Yes, Julie Walters, Jeremy Browning.
Oh,
he knows his stuff.
Oh my God.
Okay. So tell me about this CERN particle physicist turned award-winning fetish photographer early in her career.
Oh, that's my husband. I can't claim any credit for changing him from a particle physicist to a photographer. He did that. You
changed a particle physicist to an erotic photographer. Ariel.
I would like to say that, but no. So he was a particle physicist. He was working at CERN, and then he was a lecturer at the University of London in particle physics. And then he became a bondage photographer. First of all, he just started a website as a part-time thing. Then it really took off around the year 2001. And so he quit his lectureship and became a full-time professional bondage photographer. And then I worked with him at the beginning of my career. So that would have been 2004. So he'd only been in the business a couple of years before me. And we got on really well. And so we sort of set up a creative partnership. We shot a lot of projects together, some really lovely, intense BDSM for the first time in my career. And it was a really good creative partnership. And then we broke up with our respective partners and found ourselves single. And we got together, and we've been married for 12 years now. So we both produce BDSM work. Sometimes he's in charge of it. Sometimes I'm in charge of it. We work for each other. We hire other people. And it's a really lovely little cottage industry we have running from our house.
Oh, I love it. I love it when kinky people come together and do something productive and creative. Yeah. This is why we're in this. That's why we're doing all this. He's a physicist, yes. Right? A particle physicist, right? So I'm just curious on how, because as I studied science, I was going to be a chemist. I was going to be a pharmacist. You look at the world differently as a chemist, as a biologist, as a physicist. You look at the world differently as opposed to an artist. It's a different kind of style. I am very curious about how his view on the BDSM world is, as opposed to there's you who you're an artist. You're an artist. I'm sure he's an artist too, but right now, for the purpose of this conversation, you're the artist. So how do you make that work? How do you find that balance?
The thing I noticed that is really good about him, because of his background in science rather than art, for example, he's just very safety conscious. I mean, he approaches things like a physicist, and he does risk assessments, which sadly, a lot of people who should be doing risk assessments for bondage shoots are not doing them. And so his process of working out, okay, what's the worst that could happen and how can we mitigate against the worst possible thing happening? It's just really relaxing. And I know it sounds really boring, but the fact is that trust is so important in BDSM that if you're working with a dominant who is putting the time and energy into making sure you're safe, that is a very appealing, I think, very attractive, very arousing thing. So all for safety conscious DOMs are my favorite DOMs.
Stan Vladimir says, you helped him discover the kink particle.
Yes, I did. Yes.
Right on. Okay. All right, modeling. The power of a beautiful photograph.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You never know when someone... So check this out. I just found out Miss Melissa did the cover of this book. This is my dog, Moki. This is my dog, Moki. Shout out to a band. There's an indie punk band called Cujo, and they want to use that Moki as they use that picture on their cover of their EP for their vinyl album. So it's wild how art just goes something, a photograph specifically. So was there a certain picture that was taken of you, good or bad, that inspired something that you never expected?
Yeah, this is really strange. But at certain times in my life, I've been shooting BDSM and I've been really proud of it and I've loved the stuff I'm shooting. But at some points in my life, I've not been in my personal life fulfilled doing the BDSM personally that I want to do. And the way that I ended up knowing that, the thing that made me confront that fact was at certain points in my life, I've seen pictures of myself doing BDSM, beautiful pictures of me playing a sub, and I felt this hatred and envy towards the girl in the picture because she's doing what I'm not actually getting to do in my personal life. And so when I find myself hating the girl in the picture, I know it's because I need to rebalance and find opportunities to do the stuff that I need for myself, not just on camera. So yeah, sometimes the pictures can make me feel
get that.
Yeah.
I totally get that. So in your personal life though, not that, we don't need too much details, but in your personal life with your husband, is it a dom sub relationship? Is it something that's 24/7 or it's just in the bedroom or something? What's the situation?
24/7. Like before I got to do BDSM at all, so when all my fantasies were unfulfilled, I really liked the idea of this 24/7 incredibly intense, real, dynamic. And then when Howell and I, that's my husband, Howell and I started negotiating an actual relationship, first of all, we were just play partners. So it was very 24/7 when we saw each other. It was very full on. And then when we started discussing how to turn this into a long-term relationship and eventually marriage, we were very much luckily on the same page about not wanting it to be a 24/7 thing because sexual equality is really important to both of us.
Yes.
Especially coming from such a sexist religion as I did. The idea of actually being this kind of surrendered partner, I can't. It feels, maybe if I was a man, a male sub, I wouldn't feel this kind of, oh, I'm letting other men down. But as a submissive woman, when there is still, I think, so much sexism in society, I can't cope with the idea of doing BDSM in a 24/7 way. Now, I don't think that's the opinion everyone should have. I think if that's what you want, you should just do it. But independence and equality and making decisions together is really important to me outside our sex life. So that's how we've done things. And I have to say, I also think, I don't know if you feel the same, because I feel like you might be in a more 24/7 dynamic than me, but but I have noticed that people who try to do a 24/7 dynamic, often the relationships don't last very long because they feel themselves out a bit. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I'm a full switch. I'm a switch, and this is me. Everyone's different. I like balance, right?
Okay.
Like when it comes to everything in life, I love pizza, but I don't eat it every night. I love hip hop music. It's not always the right time to play it, right? You know what I mean? It's not always, for me, in my opinion, it is always the right time to get down on my knees and worship my queen. It's always time to do that. But still, sometimes the lawn has to be mowed. Healthcare has to be, it's be practical. This is role play. We play when we see fit.
That's how I feel as well. And I'm also aware that if you did try to do it on too full-time a basis, it might be that it would start to feel a bit of a drag. And I'm very aware of wanting it to stay really special, because it is so special. I don't want
it should be inspiring, and you want to do it.
And
you know what I mean?
Dominant to be like, oh God, I've got to dominate her again.
Oh.
Yeah.
He has to go down on me again.
Yeah, I like the idea of it staying a little bit like a special thing.
Keep it fun, whimsical, and like always on to the next. Always, that's what's beautiful about the relationship. And I'm writing a book all about us. It's like this kind of hypersexuality of kinkiness where we just kind of one up each other. It's the beauty of it. It's great. Shout out to Sunshine. All right, let's now, we're all dreamers. Oh, wait, one thing. Oh, before this, I wanted to talk about, as a submissive, it takes a lot of confidence to write a book. As a submissive, it takes a lot of confidence to write a book. So where did you find the actual confidence? Did you have help? Who's your main inspiration to keep you going? Who's your fuel?
Well, the thing that I found really useful was, because I was writing about real people in my book, because it's a memoir, it was quite frightening writing the chapters about individual play scenes that I'd done. It did feel quite exposing, because everyone can see those videos online, but I was saying how it felt to me, and it's a very intimate thing to talk about. So I wrote them imagining no one would ever have to read these chapters. They were just for me. And then I thought, okay, well, the next stage is to send them to the people I wrote about. So that was my husband and 3 of my friends who feature in the more erotic sections of the book. And so I sent them their chapters and said, just let me know if there's anything you want me to change, or if you don't want this in the book. And it was their responses that made me feel kind of safe. That, okay, well, they really like
validation.
So now I feel less frightened about the rest of the world potentially reading it.
I totally understand how you feel. When I was writing The Coolest Way, I reached out to all of my ex-girlfriends. And I sent them like the section where I was like, well, first of all, I didn't change the names. And then immediately I'm like, I'm going to sue you. You're going to be arrested. We can't do this. You can't. I'm like, oh shit, I have to change everything.
Sure.
So, yeah. And then once I did that and got them involved and become a part of it, that means it became more than just my story. It became more than just this, you know what I mean? And that is absolutely beautiful. All right. Stan Vladimir says, it would be hilarious kinky comedy show or a movie of a dom not wanting to be a dom. Like, oh my God, I have a subsession now. Dear God, why do I choose this career? There's always like a dom that's either too nervous. There's always like a problem. Too nervous, too confident, too you know, or to this or that or whatever. All right, we're gonna end this soon, but we're dreamers. We're dreamers. You're a writer, right? We're in the kink community. So let's dream for a second. What is your ultimate kinky fantasy? Imagine the fact, like, you have keep in mind, endless resources. Anybody you want, anywhere in the world. No one is saying no to you. What is your ultimate kinky fantasy?
Okay, well, my fantasies, given that you'd think I was quite imaginative and creative, given my job, you would think that I would have really wide-ranging fantasies. And actually, my fantasies keep coming back to the same thing, basically. If I could choose the environment, it would be a very refined, expensive kind of environment. I never fantasize about like grubby basements or anything like that. I'm always in beautiful places with pillars and things like that. Historical buildings, lovely.
Beautiful places with pillars.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I know. I have the same fantasies too.
Okay. My fantasies are all very grandiose. And there's always a cruel, lustful man, mostly in a suit. Sometimes he might be in a uniform. He can have a uniform if he wants. But broadly speaking, he's just smartly dressed. That's important. Smartly dressed, beautiful. And he has to fancy me. Like, that's important. In my fantasies, nothing ever happens to me that is not an expression of lust. So he is lustful, but very cruel. That's important. And the thing that I always gravitate towards over and over again is just the idea of, although I love doing bondage doesn't tend to be in my fantasies, because what I really fantasize about is the power of this cruel, lustful man to make me act against my own best interests in letting him do whatever awful things he wants to do, because he's somehow kind of persuaded me that it's what I want to. So that's what I really like. I think it's kind of like a Stockholm syndrome kind of fantasy. The idea of him influencing me into wanting to be hurt and sort of staying still without being tied up so he can cane me or whatever he wants to do. Like, that is a really appealing idea to me. And that fantasy, my fantasies rotate around this central idea. So the cruel, lustful man is always there, sometimes in a different costume, but he's basically always hurting me and making me like it.
Tom says, I believe that confidence in a dom is something Ariel finds hot. Have there ever been any instances where overconfidence in a dom has bred complacency or led to a non-ideal situation? Very good question, Tom.
Yes, that has happened. That has happened a few times. I think that I think it might be a little bit difficult being a dominant, because I think dominants often are aware that them appearing to be really expert is very appealing to subs. So I can see why it's tempting to pretend to be expert in things you're not actually expert in. So while I hope I'm quite forgiving of dominants making mistakes in scenes, because that happens all the time, you know, people tripping over things or dropping things, you know, just clumsy mistakes, that happens a lot. If you've just presented yourself as the most dominant dom in the world, who is like the most highly qualified martial artist and a PhD in everything, then if you make mistakes, silly, clumsy mistakes, it makes me not respect you very much, because you've kind of overplayed your hand in pretending to be the most expert person ever. So actually, I do think a bit of humility is quite attractive in everyone, dominant or submissive. So really, over arrogant doms are a massive turn off to me, and probably to everyone, really, right?
Ariel, thank you for saying that.
You're very welcome. But I do understand that as a dominant, it must be really tempting to kind of put on this show, because you're just trying to put your best foot forward. And I guess to an inexperienced sub, someone pretending to be really experienced might be quite impressive. It's just that you need to put in the work to learn the skills to back that up, basically.
Now let's talk about expertise in teaching. We're almost done, but let's talk about expertise in teaching. In a sense, who are the people that really taught you, the ones that you really want to give you flowers to, and just basically like, these people mentored me. They should be documented, known.
Yeah. Well, I guess writing my book gave me an opportunity to do that a bit, which I'm really grateful for. So the first BDSM photographer I worked with is China Hamilton, who is sadly not alive anymore. But he was a great entry point for me to the BDSM world. He taught me a lot. He introduced me to a lot of people, and I am certainly very grateful to him. And my husband taught me a lot. I mean, my husband taught me how the business works. He taught a lot of the skills I use every day, like bondage rigging. I learned from him. Video editing, I learned from him. Picture editing, I learned from him. All the basics of how to upload stuff onto platforms to sell, I learned all of that from him. So he really has kind of set me up with all the skills that I now have that I can use to monetize my work, and I'm so appreciative of that, because I know that I was aware of my own limitations, and I am not technically gifted. I don't like computers. They make me a bit scared. And I think if it hadn't been for someone having the patience to guide me through how this stuff works, I think I might not be self-producing in the way that I am. I think I might still be working for other people, having not taken the plunge to produce my own work. And that's been so valuable that I'm very grateful that he took the time to teach me these things.
A couple of things I want to say about people with expertise. This is just a shout out to teachers out there. Anybody who's teaching, whether it's a school teacher, a college professor, a teacher at a dungeon teaching classes. Teachers, they are not appreciative. They're not appreciated. I appreciate you. I recognize you. The kink community recognizes you, and we are in this together.
They're so sexy. A teacher, such a sexy thing. Yes.
Now let's talk about that, because you, with your amazing British accent, I'll be guilty. I fetishize the British accent. A woman British accent, the teacher, the British school teacher. It's a thing. Shout out to Melissa Todd. Melissa Todd.
Melissa Todd. Yes, I agree. Splendid lady.
So please, do you, and there's also the submissive, as you know, the whole, especially in the British school system, right? So that as adults in the consensual world, do you use the teacher-student dynamic?
Well, I do at work loads. So I play teachers and headmistresses a lot when I'm doing pieces to camera, when I'm like playing my dom roles in POV movies. I like playing a schoolgirl very much. Obviously, I don't look like anyone's idea of a schoolgirl because I'm 6'2". So it's not like I get to play schoolgirl roles very much, but they're kind of where I started with spanking work. That's often what you get to play first. You get to be a schoolgirl. And I love that. I still like to dress like a schoolgirl. I think in general life, I call my style, my sort of fashion sense, I call it head girl chic. And I like a plaid skirt and a V-neck sweater. So no, I love kind of school aesthetic. I like it very much.
I do want to point out that we are consenting adults in all of this. Yeah,
I'm 47. Yeah. I feel like I should be allowed to dress up like a schoolgirl at this point. I don't think I'm going to convince anyone.
So back to the money aspect. You're selling books. You're trying to, your husband's a photographer. It's hard to make money in the BDSM world, in the kink community. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of pushback. There's the Christian right. There's whatever religion coming after us, right? So how can kinky people make money?
Well, first of all, by being a woman, that really helps. I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. It's at the moment, the war on porn is affecting everyone, but it seems to be that the war on porn people seem to be particularly going after the traditional male producers, because it's very hard to argue that a woman who's shooting content of herself and selling it herself, it's hard to argue that she's being exploited, because if there is exploiting going on, she's doing it to herself. Whereas it is rather easier to look at like a traditional porn studio and go, oh, look at those men making all this money off these young women. So I do think one of the best things you can do in this industry at the moment is to self-produce, especially if you're a woman, because it's very hard to argue that you don't know what you're doing if you are producing content of yourself on your own in your bedroom and selling it on OnlyFans or Clips for Sale or whatever. So although it's not impossible that the war on porn will shut us down or at least make us change how we do things, I do think kind of very visibly as a woman shooting what you actually like and being very enthusiastic about it, very obviously enthusiastically consenting, I think that does make it harder for people to argue that you don't know what you're doing stuff you don't want to do, and that you're being exploited. So that's what I try to do, really, just show how much I'm enjoying the freedom I have as a result of my career.
Okay, rapid fire recommendations. They don't have to be kink related at all. Recommend a film.
Well, I just rewatched Schindler's List, so I'm going to have to say Schindler's List because it was like just amazing. I've not watched it for years, and I watched it again, and just the way it humanizes so many people in the story. It's telling the story of 6 million people, really, through telling the story of a few, and like the power of that is amazing. And the cinematography, I didn't know much about it the last time I watched it, but now I know more about cinematography. I can see how beautiful and how ambitious it is. So yeah, totally recommend that.
Especially, I mean, filming in black and white, having only the red jacket, or even the beginning with the colors of the candles, how it automatically goes to black and white. Magnificent movie. I remember cutting school to go see that movie. I love film, and I'm a huge history buff and stuff like that. It's an amazing film, and it's a very inspiring film as well.
Yeah, because again, it's about integrity. Like it's about courage. And it's on the background of the Holocaust, of a horrific thing, but the story it tells is of having the integrity to do what you know is right, and that's just such a compelling message always. That I loved it. Loved it.
Recommend a book.
Oh my God. My favorite book in the last couple of years is called Girl A by Abigail Dean. And the reason I love it so much is it's about children growing up in a cult. So it's very resonant to me. And it's beautifully expressed, the horror of it. I mean, it's a far more extreme version than what I went through. It's a fictional version.
Now, before we continue with rapid fire recommendations, you said cult. You said it, not me. What do you say as someone who's? I'm not saying being a Jehovah's Witness is a cult, but it's been labeled as people say, "Oh, you're in a cult," very cult-like, stuff like that. What do you think the people who use that word, "you're in a cult," like, for example, the Trumpers, people who love Donald Trump, they're like, "Oh, you're in a cult." People who love something, they say, "You're in a cult. You're in a cult." What do you think? What do you feel about when people use that terminology?
I think the word gets massively overused. I don't think anything counts as a cult if there aren't quite serious punishments for leaving the cult. So if you're in a group where you can leave without anyone making life difficult for you, I don't think it's a cult. I think cults specifically make it hard to leave by imposing penalties on people who try. So for me, I always apply that definition if I'm deciding for myself whether I think something is a cult or not. So for that reason, I think the Jehovah's Witnesses would count as a cult because of the forcing you to be cut off from anyone in the Jehovah's Witnesses if you leave. But I would say maybe the Trump thing. We'll
get back to the rapid fire recommendation.
I don't think
I don't know what trolls coming over nonsense. All right, rapid fire recommendations. Did a book, recommend a television show.
Oh, what did I just watch? And it was fantastic. I wrote it down. Hang on. I wrote it down because I thought I'd forget. And I need to tell you because it was so Amazing. The Program. It's called The Program. It's on Netflix. It's a 3-episode series, and it's about the troubled teen industry in America during the early 2000s. Massive human rights abuses went on. And the amazing thing is, this series is made by the survivors of one of these schools that people sent their troubled teens to. And these were abusive programs. And now these teenagers are in their 30s and are making a documentary, and it's just dynamite. Like, it's very distressing to watch, but it's incredible filmmaking, and I love it. Love it. Because there's a kind of cult-like environment that they created, and I'm always interested in sort of high control groups, I guess.
Recommend a meal.
Oh, I love like British Indian. I'm just learning how to cook British Indian food, and I love it. I love Indian restaurants in the UK. I've not been to Indian restaurants anywhere outside the UK, actually.
You come to America.
Okay.
Come to America. Our Indian food is great.
I will. But I believe we've got some dishes that were specifically designed in the UK by Indian people who'd come over and were like, what will the British people want to eat? So we've got some curries that are specifically for like British people. What will they eat?
If you're ever on the East Coast, right? If you ever happen to be in New Jersey, there's a place called Edison, New Jersey, right? Oak Tree Road, Green Street. It's authentic. Wonderful, wonderful shops, wonderful restaurants, wonderful food, every type of Indian food you could think of, north, south, everywhere in between. Everyone, shout out to Indian, my fellow Indian people in Edison, New Jersey. I love you. Pav bhaji, ragda patties, all that stuff, all good. All right, we're almost done. I keep on saying that. So, all right, the kink rabbit hole goes deep. I'm into things that I never thought I'd be into. Right. So what are some new things kind of that are piquing your interest, that you're just kind of getting involved with, or,
Well, again, I feel a bit pathetic in this regard, in that I'm not particularly curious, because often the thing that makes me want to try something is the fact that someone I'm doing BDSM with is interested in it. So, for example, like, I had never been interested in foot whipping, like bastinado. No interest. I'd never fantasized about that. But I got together with my husband, who's got a foot fetish, and he wanted to do bastinado. And I discovered, wow, this is really exciting. It's really sexy. But I don't feel like I want to go and explore it with a whole load of other people who don't have that fetish, because it's the fact that he's into it that makes it hot. So I'm very malleable in that regard. The fact that it's something that the dominant I'm playing with is enjoying makes a massive difference to me.
Oh, yes, of course.
So I can imagine a lot of different kind of dom-sub relationships that I could potentially enjoy. Like, for example, pet play. Like, I can see the appeal of it. It's not something I particularly think about. But if I was with someone who wanted me to be his pet, then I think I could get massively behind that idea.
Well, there's a loyalty. There's a loyalty to it. Shout out to Mistress Shari and Mischief Manor. Mischief Manor is a dungeon, that I helped, kind of set up, helped her set up. Shout out to Catnip and Black Messy and the whole crew there. The wonderful people. Awesome people. And they had a pet play party a couple weeks ago. And you would think that, like, oh, you're not into it. Everyone told me, I was like, just be a part of it. I went because I love the people. I'm like, I am not into pet play at all, but I respect it because I saw it. And I also have the attitude of like, yeah, sure, I'm up to anything. And the camaraderie between the dom or the handler and the pup, the loyalty, the protection, all of that connection is beautiful. And if it wasn't for an attitude of being cool, being kind, and being open-minded, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't been able to experience that the whole night.
Exactly. Like, I think if your primary interest in BDSM is the power dynamic, which certainly it is for me, I mean, you can get that power exchange from so many different activities that I'm kind of interested in all of it, but only if it's doing it with someone who's interested in it too, because that's what kind of makes the magic. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, the BDSM is such a wide spectrum, and yeah, I suspect I
Okay.
could probably learn to enjoy an awful lot of it.
We're gonna play the final game. We're out of here, and we
Okay.
can tell everybody how to buy your book, where to get it, where to look for it, and what's in the future. We're gonna do all that. Buy Ariel Anderssen's book. Do
Yes,
it.
playing to lose, everybody.
Playing to lose.
The
But
audio
let's
coming in
play
July.
overrated, underrated. So this is the game. I'm gonna say a kink or a fetish. You say the first thing that pops into your head. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
You say the first thing pops, and then you say if it's overrated or underrated. So if
Okay.
I say French maid outfits, you may say overrated because I see them all the time. But you may say underrated because I see them all the time. I appreciate, you know what I mean?
Okay. Okay.
Whatever. So overrated, underrated, and everybody in the chat, shout out your things. I'll put it on the screen. All right.
Okay.
Overrated, underrated. Spanking.
Love spankings. That can't be overrated. Best thing ever. Best thing. Yes, love it.
All right. Overrated, underrated. Face slapping.
Love it. Underrated. I mean, obviously, if you don't like it, you shouldn't do it. I love it. Love it. Feels so intimate.
Okay. French maid outfits.
Yeah, I don't like them. It's nothing against them. It's just I get to wear them a lot at work, so it might as well be like a McDonald's uniform to me. I'm just in them all the time.
I didn't think of it that way. That's
Yeah,
funny.
sorry.
No. Well, see, that's what's interesting about the sissy, the person who dreams of having a French maid outfit. You would love to have that problem of having. I wear them all the time at work. You know.
Yeah, I know.
So that's very funny that you said that. Okay. Also, chastity devices.
Oh yeah, like them. Again, like I wouldn't like to say whether they were overrated or underrated because it very much depends on whether you like them. But I like chastity play. Yeah, I like it very much. I work for a site called Chastity Babes in the Netherlands, and I love that. Yes.
Get 15% off discount with offer code YKF at Locked in Lust. Everybody, Locked in Lust. Get the Vice. It's fun. I personally like the metal one myself. It's fun. Like you said, connection. It's all about connection. All right. Overrated, underrated. The 50s housewife dynamic.
Oh, I like that. I like that. It's fun. I like the dresses. I wouldn't want to be the little woman, but pretending to be the little woman for the purposes of eroticness. Yeah, that's great. Love it.
There you go with that. I'm glad that you said that because the same thing with like say the sissification narrative, right? Now, as a woman, you like the 50s housewife narrative, but as a woman, there's also it's complicated emotions.
Yeah.
With what's going on. So how do you kind of work through that? And what has your conclusion been?
With the trad wife thing that's happening at the moment on social media, with women presenting themselves as these kind of traditional wives who don't go out to work and just make cookies from scratch all day. I mean, it looks to me like a fetish activity. It looks like they're playing a game, like a sex game. But because they're not being honest about that, they are appealing to a whole load of conservative men who think that's what women should be doing. That makes it really problematic. I think it's much better if this is a sex game. That's it. I feel like that's more honest.
Right on. I'm glad that you said that. I am so glad you said it. Okay, overrated, underrated. We got some comments. Tickling, overrated, underrated.
I'm sorry because there's nothing wrong with it. I just don't really like it. I feel like I feel undermined by it because I'm so grandiose. I like the idea of really big, serious things happening to me in BDSM, and tickling makes me feel like I'm being undermined because it's so lighthearted. So it's not really where my kinks lie. My kinks lie more towards stuff being very dramatic and quite grandiose. But I do shoot tickling.
Ball gags, overrated, underrated.
Love ball gags. They're not my total favorite kind of gag, but I like them a lot, and they're the first kind of gag I learned about. So I think I kind of imprinted upon them that's kind of the ultimate proper. It looks very kinky, doesn't it? It looks very, yeah, that's a real BDSM prop. Wow.
Sunshine says butt plugs.
Love them, love them, love them, love them. I mean, I'm a bit embarrassed by how much I like them, because why does that feel so good? Why does that feel so good? I don't know, but it does, and I like it.
Great. You just gave Sunshine some ideas. This is an inspiring show. Vasily says, office classic suit, cable ties, tie, please. Okay. Suspension seems to be the big thing with newbie kinksters. So suspension, overrated or underrated?
I do feel like it's, for me, I think I was expecting something from it beyond what it gave me. Because honestly, these days, being suspended doesn't give me anything that just being tied up doesn't give me. Sorry, I don't think I said that wrong. Like, I don't think suspension is better than just well-applied bondage if you're on the floor.
I think it's
Mhm.
an added element. I think it's an added element that takes it to a different level.
Really
I know what you mean, though. I definitely know what you mean when it comes to like it. It is what it is. It's everything is everything. It's
It was, to
not.
me,
I thought it was some cathartic thing was going to come out of it.
yeah, I think it feels like it's just bondage with an extra time limit imposed and extra risk imposed. So generally,
Which is effective, which can be effective if done with the right people. I truly believe. Now,
yeah.
Jeremy, all right, overrated, underrated, drool.
Huh. I'm pretty ambivalent about drool, to be honest. I do drooling because I know that some people like it. So on camera, I will happily do it. It doesn't particularly add anything one way or the other to me. It doesn't make me feel humiliated or bad or anything, but it doesn't make me feel like, wow, now I'm drooling. This is serious now. It's, yeah, I just feel pretty neutral towards it, honestly.
Stan Vladimir says handcuffs, overrated or underrated?
I think I've worn them too much to have strong feelings about them. I remember the first time I was handcuffed at a shoot, it felt so exciting. And now they just don't really feel quite as restrictive as I want. So, like, I do like metal bondage, but I would tend to like the stuff that's more restrictive, that where you can move around less, like a kind of metal frame with cuffs attached or something like that. Cuffs on their own, it just feels like you can still just walk down the street in them. It feels like it's not restrictive enough for me.
You can. You see criminals on a perp walk walking down the street to the jail.
Exactly.
And Vladimir, sensory deprivation.
Oh, yeah, I love that. Love that. I've not really done enough of it. I find it really frightening. I'm a little bit claustrophobic, so I do find it quite an edgy thing to do. Like I think it's the sort of thing that I could get to my limit with, for sure. I do find it quite frightening. But as a result, because it's frightening, it's exciting. So yeah, like it very much.
Stan Vladimir says latex and leather.
That is another thing I feel very, very neutral about. I guess because I wear a lot of it for work, I don't feel any more sexy in leather or latex than I do without those things. I think maybe this is because I'm a woman, or maybe it's because I'm a model. So I get to wear a lot of this stuff. It doesn't make me feel any different. So I don't think any particular clothing makes me feel more sexy or less sexy, really. So I think maybe it's the sort of thing that someone with a very visual brain is more attracted to. So yeah, I've got nothing against it, but it doesn't make me, I've not got a kink for it. Yeah.
Sunshine says, Ariel, don't be embarrassed by anything that makes you feel good. So let me, as we wrap it up, this is, like I said, this is a positive show. I'm trying to help people, try to educate people, trying to just create discussion in a very basic, genuine, whimsical way. As someone who's been in the kink community, how can we help each other out? What are some ways kink can help kink?
Okay, well, I think that people who are not in the industry, kinky people who aren't in the industry, can really help get rid of the stigma of being in the kink industry by interacting with us on social media and being open about their kinks. I think that's really valuable. I think people who are in the industry can be supportive of kinky people who aren't by using our platform, because we tend to have a lot of followers, to make sure that we amplify the voices of kinky people who are not shooting porn but might be doing other really valuable things like writing books or podcasts or all the other kind of creative stuff that you could be doing. So that's what I think we can do to help each other. We can just make sure that we treat other kinky people who might not have the same kinks as us or might not be in the same bit of the industry as us, treating them with respect and appreciation. I think that's what we can all do.
Yes. And with that being said, Tom Schlerbuck says, I love everything you do in pantyhose. Overrated or underrated?
Having said I don't feel any more sexy in any particular clothes, I do actually really like pantyhose. I wear a lot of stockings and they're fine, but I feel more attractive in pantyhose. I think it just makes you feel so streamlined and a little bit like a superheroine, and I like that feeling. So yeah, like pantyhose. Ha!
Shout out to Nico Noir, the magnificent Nico Noir, very good friend, also known as the Pantyhose Princess.
Oh.
Yes, Nico Noir. I would love for you two to talk, definitely. So, okay. The final question is basically, look, we're all going through this path. You know, we're traveling along. We're all looking for something. Where do you want this path to lead you to?
At the moment, everything that happens, I'm hoping exciting things will happen so I can put them in my new book. So I'm hoping for lots of kinky experiences that are different from what's gone before, so that I can experience this stuff and process it and then write it so other people can share it with it. That's what I'm looking for at the moment. New experiences.
Yeah. Nice. Yes. On that note, thank you, Ariel Anderssen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for everything. How can we buy your book? How can we promote your work? How can we find you? How can we just be a part of everything that is Ariel Anderssen?
You can find me on Twitter, where I tweet a lot, at Ariel Anderssen. My book is Playing to Lose. You can find it like on amazon.co.uk, amazon.com. The publisher Unbound also has it on their website. It's also on the website of all the British big bookshop chains like Waterstones and Foyles and all the others. It will be in bookshops in the US from this December. So it's not there yet. So your only option if you're outside the UK is to get it on Amazon as an ebook at the moment. The audiobook is coming, but if you follow me on Twitter at Ariel Anderssen, I will update you with all of that stuff all of the time, because I am a terrible, relentless marketing person.
You have to be. And,
Yeah.
if you think about it, I look at it this way. You see all these DOMs out there promoting their work. They're doing it for themselves. They're producing their own work. They're getting their name out there. They're getting the sessions by themselves. Eventually, they get up subs and they get a following where they can do it. Writing is the same way. Art is the same way. Music is the same way. We have to go out there, build a following. And it all comes from inspiration. And that's what we do. Ariel Anderssen, thank you so much. Please, everybody, go to Your Kinky Friends. Go to the Patreon. Go to Locked in Lust. Get 15% off with code YKF. I have health problems. I'm in need. This could be the very last episode of Your Kinky Friends. If people out there do not contribute, save, and keep this going, kink helps kink people. We are in this together. You don't see me tons of money and editing and stuff like that. It is what it is. It's raw. Everything is everything. Let's go forward. Let's be peaceful. Let's be kinky. Do something creative and positive. Ariel Anderssen, thank you so much for everything.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Bye-bye.
And remember the cardinal rule, everybody. Be cool, be kind, keep an open mind. Take care.
Yeah.